You stopped texting. You stopped calling. And suddenly they cannot stop thinking about you. That is not a coincidence. That is psychology. And if you stay with me for the next few minutes, I am going to show you exactly what is happening inside the mind of an avoidant when you go quiet, because this is where it gets really interesting. Comment the word shift right now if you are ready to understand why silence is the most powerful thing you have ever underestimated. So let me start by asking you something. Have you ever poured everything into someone? Texts, calls, effort, energy. You showed up for them in every possible way. And the more you gave, the more they pulled back. The more available you were, the less they seemed to want you. And you kept thinking, if I just love them a little harder, if I just explain myself a little better, if I just stay a little longer, they will finally see it. They will finally feel it. They will finally come back. But they did not. And you were left there wondering, what is wrong with me? Why am I not enough? Why does being loving and present and consistent push them further away? Here is what nobody told you. The problem was never your love. The problem was the dynamic that love created. And once you understand how an avoidant brain actually works, once you really get under the hood of what is driving their behavior, everything changes. Not just how you see them, how you see yourself. So let us talk about avoidance. Let us really talk about them. An avoidant is not someone who does not have feelings. That is the first thing I need you to unlearn right now. An avoidant has very deep feelings, often overwhelming feelings, but somewhere early in their life, they learned something dangerous. They learned that needing people is unsafe. They learned that depending on someone leads to disappointment. They learned that closeness equals pain. Maybe they had a parent who was emotionally unavailable. Maybe every time they reached out for comfort, they were dismissed or mocked or ignored. Maybe they were taught that emotions are weakness. Maybe the people who were supposed to show them that love is safe showed them the exact opposite. So their brain adapted, their nervous system built a wall, and behind that wall, they stored everything. Their needs, their desires, their longing, their fear, all of it got locked away. And on the outside, they learned to perform independence, self-sufficiency, cool detachment. They learned to tell themselves, I do not need anyone. And for a long time, that story protected them. But here's the thing about walls. They do not actually kill the feelings inside. They just keep them pressurized, hidden, building. And that is where you come in. When you entered their life and you were warm and consistent and loving and present, something happened inside them that they were not prepared for. The wall started to feel threatened. The feelings started to rise. And instead of leaning into that, instead of seeing it as something beautiful, their nervous system sounded the alarm. Danger, closeness approaching, pull back, create distance, protect yourself. And so they did. They pulled away. They went cold. They stopped responding. They became difficult. And you chased, because that is what a loving person does. When someone they care about seems to be slipping away, you reach out more. You try harder, you become more available, more understanding, more patient. But every time you chased, every time you pursued, every time you closed the distance, you accidentally confirmed their deepest belief. That closeness is something to be managed, that your love is something that needs to be regulated, that they have the power in this dynamic, and the power is comfortable. The chase gave them permission to keep avoiding, because they knew you would always be there. They knew the distance was safe, because you would always close it for them. And this is the part that nobody wants to hear. Your consistency, as beautiful as it was, as genuine as it was, became the very thing that made them feel they did not have to try. So what changes when you stop? What actually happens inside the mind of an avoidant when the texts stop coming, when the calls go silent, when you, the person who is always there, suddenly disappear? Let me walk you through this slowly, because this is the part that is going to shift everything for you. In the beginning, they feel relief. I want to be very honest with you about this. When you first go quiet, they exhale. They feel that familiar sense of space that they have always craved. And their first thought might genuinely be, finally, some room to breathe, some distance. This feels right. And if you are sitting there expecting an immediate reaction, expecting them to panic right away, you will be disappointed, because it does not happen like that. The avoidant nervous system does not respond to your silence the way an anxious nervous system would. They do not immediately spiral. They do not immediately reach out. At first, they settle into the distance. But then something else starts to happen. It happens quietly. It happens in the background, almost like a sound they cannot quite hear, but can feel in their chest. You are not there anymore. And that, for an avoidant, is a very strange sensation, because for all the times they pulled away, for all the times they created distance, for all the times they said they wanted space, The truth is, they always had the security of knowing you were still there. Your presence was the safety net under their tightrope. They could walk away because they knew you would not. Now, you have taken that safety net away. And here is where the psychology becomes fascinating. The avoidant starts to notice small things, things that did not seem significant before. They notice the silence of their phone. They notice that they have not heard from you. They might scroll past your name in their contacts and feel something they cannot quite name, not quite missing you, not yet, but something like the awareness of your absence. And the brain does something instinctive when something familiar disappears. It starts to search for it. It starts to replay it. It starts to assign value to it. Think about this. How many times in your life have you taken something for granted until it was gone? How many times has the value of something only become clear when it was no longer available? The avoidance brain is doing exactly that now, except they are doing it with you. Days pass, maybe a week, maybe two, and the quiet discomfort starts to grow into something more recognizable. They start thinking about you more frequently, not in the way they thought about managing you or handling you or keeping you at the right distance. They start thinking about you in a different way. They remember things, specific moments, something you said that made them smile, something you did that they never quite acknowledged, but now cannot stop thinking about. The way you laughed, the way you always showed up, the way you made them feel safe, even when they were doing everything to push you away. And now those memories are hitting different because they come with a new question. Where are you? And this question, this single question, is more powerful than any text you ever sent them, because they are generating it themselves. It is coming from inside their own mind. It is not you pursuing them. It is them pursuing you in the privacy of their own thoughts. This is the shift. Now, I want to be clear about something, because I think this is where a lot of people get it wrong. Going quiet is not a game. It is not a trick. It is not about manipulation or power plays or making someone feel bad. If that is your intention, if you are doing this purely to hurt them or get revenge or make them jealous, then you are not doing it right, and the results will reflect that. Real silence, the kind I'm talking about, comes from a completely different place. It comes from the moment you decide that your energy is valuable, that your time is precious, that the version of you that chases and over-explains and over-functions deserves better. It comes from genuine self-respect, not strategy. And that is exactly why it works, because an avoidant can feel the difference. They always could. When you were chasing, there was a desperation to your energy. And I say that without judgment, because desperation in attachment is just fear. It is the fear of losing someone you love. It is completely understandable. But the avoidant felt that energy, and it activated their need to pull back. When you stop chasing, the energy shifts entirely. There is no desperation anymore. There is just you living your life, not waiting, not watching your phone, not crafting the perfect message, just being. And that version of you is magnetizing in a way the chasing version never could be. Because here is what an avoidant is fundamentally attracted to: independence, self-containment, someone who does not need them. Not because they want to be neglected, but because independence is the thing they have always valued most. It is the very thing they built their identity around. And someone who embodies that genuinely, not performatively, is someone they cannot stop thinking about. When you stop reaching out, you become that person. You become someone with a life that is full and rich and not centered around them. And they feel that, they notice it, and it does something to them that all your words and effort and consistency never quite manage to do. It makes them want to earn you. Now let us talk about what happens when the avoidance starts to crack, because they do crack. Not all of them, not always in the way you are hoping for, but when a real connection exists, when there was genuine feeling underneath all that distance, the silence will draw something out of them. It might start with something small, like on your social media, a casual response to a story you posted, something that they can frame as meaningless so they can maintain their sense of control. Because an avoidant does not just dive back in, they test the water, they put one toe in and see what happens. And this is a critical moment. This is where most people undo everything, because you see their small gesture and your anxious attachment lights up. And suddenly you are flooding back in with all the warmth and all the availability and all the eagerness that you had before. And just like that, the dynamic snaps back to what it was. They have you again. The safety net is back, and they retreat. Do not do that. When they reach out, whether it is a small gesture or a real message or a call, your energy needs to be warm but measured. Present but not desperate. Interested but not urgent. You respond with genuine warmth because you are not playing cold games. But you do not suddenly become 100% available. You do not drop everything. You do not over-explain how much you miss them. You just be the person you have been being while they were gone. the person who has a full life, the person who is not sitting by the phone waiting, the person who is quite honestly doing fine. That is the version of you they are reaching out to. Do not replace that person with the old version the moment they show up. And I want to talk now about something that goes even deeper than the strategy, something that is actually more important than anything I have said so far. What if you use this silence not just to affect them, but to genuinely reclaim yourself? Because here is the truth. When you are in that anxious chasing loop with an avoidant, you lose yourself piece by piece. You start organizing your whole emotional life around their moods. You start shrinking your needs because their needs feel so much louder. You start monitoring your own behavior constantly, asking yourself, was that too much? Did I say the wrong thing? Did I push them away? You stop being you and start being a person who is managed by their dynamic. And the silence, real silence, is the opportunity to find yourself again, to remember what you love, what fills you up, what makes you feel alive, to reconnect with the version of you that existed before this person became the center of your emotional world. That reconnection is not just good for your mental health, it is transformative for the dynamic. Because when you are genuinely full, when you are genuinely engaged in your own life, when you are genuinely not waiting, it shows, it is felt, and it is irresistible. An avoidant who watches you step fully into your own life, who sees you thriving, who reaches out and finds you warm but not desperate, engaged but not available on demand, interested but clearly not just waiting around for them, that avoidant starts to feel something very unfamiliar, fear of losing you, and that fear is the thing that has the power to move them. Not your love, not your explanations, not your tears, not your patience. Their own fear of losing something they now realize was real and rare and not replaceable. Let us also be honest about something uncomfortable. Not every avoidant will come back. Not every silence will produce the result you are hoping for. Some avoidants are so deeply defended, so committed to their wall, that even the most powerful shift in your energy will not be enough to move them. And that is not a reflection of your worth. That is a reflection of their readiness, of how much work they have done or have not done on themselves, of the depth of their avoidance. And if that is the case, if they do not come back, then what? Then the silence was still the best thing you ever did, because it gave you your life back. It showed you that you can exist without centering your entire being around someone who was not choosing you. It proved to you that you are capable of exactly the kind of self-respect and self-possession that you have always deserved. That is never a loss. That is always a win. But for those situations where there is real feeling, real history, real connection, the silence tends to work in ways that nothing else does, because it changes the conversation entirely. Instead of you trying to convince them to want you, you are now in a position where they are trying to convince themselves about you. They are the one generating the longing. They are the one sitting with the questions. They are the one reaching out. And when they reach out, you are in a completely different position than you were before. You are not the one chasing. You are not the one begging. You are the one who chose themselves, who walked away, not dramatically, not with ultimatums or anger, but quietly, gracefully, with dignity. And that version of you is someone they do not quite know how to handle. Let me talk about the patterns that play out during this period, because understanding these patterns helps you stay grounded. The first pattern is what I call the slow boomerang. This is the most common with avoidance. They do not come rushing back immediately. They take time, days, weeks, sometimes longer, depending on how deep the avoidance goes. During this time, they are processing internally. They might not even reach out right away, but they are thinking, they are evaluating, they are feeling the absence. And when they do finally reach out, it might be subtle, a casual check-in disguised as something else, a question about something random, a reference to a shared memory, something that gives them plausible deniability so they can say to themselves, I was just being friendly. But underneath it, there is always more. Learn to read the subtext. The second pattern is what I call the test ping. This is when they send something small, almost throwaway, to see how you respond. They are not necessarily ready to dive back in. They are testing the energy. They want to see if you are still the same, if you are still waiting, if you are going to flood back in immediately. Your response to a test ping is everything. Keep it light, keep it warm, keep it short, match their energy or go slightly below it. Do not pour yourself into the response. Let the conversation breathe. The third pattern is the direct reconnection. This is rarer with deeply avoidant people, but it does happen, especially when they have had enough time to sit with their feelings and the feelings have gotten too loud to ignore. They reach out more directly. They say something real, something vulnerable. Maybe they say they have been thinking about you. Maybe they ask to talk. When this happens, your instinct is going to be to immediately say yes to everything, to immediately rush back in. Slow down, be warm, be open, but let them do the work of re-establishing the connection. Let them show up, let them initiate, let them earn back the access they had before, because that earning process is important, not as punishment, but because it establishes a new dynamic, one where they understand that your presence, your attention, your energy is not automatic. It is chosen, and it can be unchosen. That understanding changes how they treat the relationship going forward. The silence is not comfortable when every part of you wants to reach out. When you see something that reminds you of them and your fingers hover over your phone, when you have had a hard day and they are the first person you want to tell, when a song comes on and suddenly you can barely breathe. This is the emotional weight of real attachment, and it is not weakness. It is love. But you have to learn to hold that love differently now, not as something that compels you to reach out, but as something that motivates you to hold your standard. Every time you want to text them, do something for yourself instead. Not to distract yourself from the pain, but to invest in yourself. Go for a run. Call a friend you have been neglecting. Work on something you are passionate about. Do the things that fill you up from the inside. Because this period, as painful as it is also the period when you can make the most profound investments in yourself. And those investments will show. They will be visible in the way you carry yourself when this person finally comes back around. They will be present in your energy, in your sense of self, in the way you move through the world. You will be different, not in a performed way, in a real, grounded, fully embodied way. And that difference is the thing that rewrites the entire dynamic. I also want to address something that a lot of people wonder about during this period. What about if we have shared obligations? What if we work together? What if we have mutual friends? What if we have kids together? In those situations, you cannot go fully silent in the social sense, and you do not need to. What you are shifting is not about cutting all communication. It is about cutting the emotional overfunctioning, the texting out of anxious attachment, the calling because you need reassurance, the reaching out just to feel close because the uncertainty is unbearable. When you have shared obligations, you keep communication functional and clean. You communicate what needs to be communicated. You are civil, warm even, but you do not extend beyond what is necessary. You do not create opportunities for emotional entanglement. You do not use the shared obligation as a backdoor to closeness, because the avoidant will notice this too. They will notice that you are not using every possible moment of contact to try to pull them in, and that restraint will affect them just as the silence would. Now, let us talk about something that I think is deeply important and often overlooked in conversations like this one: healing. Because this conversation is not just about getting an avoidant to want you. It is about you understanding yourself, understanding your patterns, understanding why you were drawn to this dynamic in the first place. Because I will tell you something that might be a little uncomfortable. Anxious attachment and avoidant attachment do not find each other by accident. These two patterns have a very specific and very predictable chemistry. The anxious person chases, and the avoidant retreats, and somehow this dance feels like love to both of them. To the anxious person, the highs and lows feel like intensity, like passion. To the avoidant, the pattern confirms their belief that relationships are complicated and closeness is something to be managed. And both people in this dance are operating from old wounds, old programming, old stories that were written long before this relationship began. So while you are in this silence, while you are in this period of stepping back and reclaiming yourself, I want you to also gently look at your own patterns. Ask yourself where you learned that love looks like chasing. Ask yourself why someone pulling away makes you want to hold on tighter. Ask yourself what belief is underneath your fear of losing them. Not to judge yourself, not to shame yourself, but to understand yourself. Because that understanding is what will prevent you from recreating the same dynamic with this person or the next person or the one after that. The real goal here is not to win the avoidant back. The real goal is to become someone whose self-respect is so strong, so consistent, so genuine that you naturally create a different kind of dynamic with everyone you encounter. A dynamic where your needs matter, where your presence is valued, where love does not feel like a constant negotiation between your desire for closeness and their need for distance. That is the life worth building toward. And the beautiful thing is that the silence, the stepping back, the reclaiming of yourself, those things move you toward that life, whether the avoidant comes back or not. Now, let us bring it back to the avoidant for a moment, because I know that is what is on your mind. When all of this plays out, when you have held your silence, when you have genuinely invested in yourself, when you have maintained your energy and your boundaries and your dignity, and they do come back, there's a conversation that will eventually need to happen. Not immediately, not in the first moments of reconnection when the relief of their return is overwhelming, but eventually, a real conversation about what this dynamic has been, about what you need, about what they are actually capable of offering. Because all the psychology in the world, all the silence in the world, does not create lasting change in a relationship if there is no honest communication, if there is no willingness on both sides to look at the patterns and actually address them. An avoidant who comes back without self-awareness or real reflection usually returns because they fear losing you, not because they've changed. Once they feel safe again, the same patterns often return. So don't just look for their presence, look for growth. Can they talk openly about what happened? Can they take responsibility instead of shutting down or deflecting? Are they willing to build something different? If they return but want to pretend nothing happened, that's your answer. Fear brought them back, but growth hasn't happened yet. This is where your self-respect is truly tested, not when they're gone, but when they're back and you're tempted to accept whatever they offer. Instead, calmly say, "I'm glad you're here, but we need to talk about what happened and how we move forward differently." If they can't have that conversation, believe what they're showing you. A painful truth is far better than years spent hoping someone will change. Your time and emotional energy are too valuable to invest in someone who only chooses you when they're afraid to lose you. Healthy love is consistent in the quiet, ordinary moments, not just during emotional crisis. So, stop texting. Stop calling, not to play games, but because your energy matters. Step back because you're choosing yourself, not because you're trying to force a reaction. Fill your life with people, goals, and experiences that bring you peace. As you stop making yourself endlessly available, you become more grounded, confident, and authentic. And that's when everything changes. Whether they come back or not, you've already won because you finally chose yourself.